Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Great to have you in on a Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. Good show lined up for you today. We'll spend time with Mike Babcock, Mr. Husker Football from Hail Varsity, in about 20 minutes or so. Now, Mike Shuey is on assignment. I don't know where. That makes me sad. But we have a chance to sit down with Husker linebacker and Columbus native Ernest Hausmann. Ernest will be ready for Minnesota. He's been able to do some nice things as just a young pup, an inside linebacker for Nebraska. So we'll talk to Ernest about this freshman year at about 4:40. Longtime college football man Brad Edwards, formerly of ESPN, get his take and reaction to the college football playoff and the job openings around the country. So Brad with us in an hour. And then Evan Bland from the World Herald will join us in hour two. Numbers to get in can join us here on Hail Varsity at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Find us on the stream. The StreamYard is up and operational. Can watch the show ESPN Lincoln Facebook, ESPN Lincoln Twitter, and also on the Hail Varsity Twitter feed as well at HVarsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, that's me, at Schmidt_radio, and at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. Can follow each of us along and send emails. As always, Chris at hailvarsity.com. I will attempt to read them correctly and get to them. So, we spent a lot of time yesterday with the Arizona State news. Good story by Mitch Sherman today, who was with us yesterday, about, where Trev is at in the coaching search. And it's getting down to it with just that window of opportunity to lock up who you're going with or anoint Mickey. And this weekend is going to be big. What can Nebraska do? Shorthanded, undermanned, or at least from an experience standpoint, they're going to be lacking that comparatively at quarterback, assuming Casey Thompson can't go because you have Captain Morgan. Tanner Morgan's been in college since the Bush administration. And you have Mo Ibrahim that's going to work on another 1,000-yard season, right? Hopefully it's not 1,000 on the ground against Nebraska. I don't think so against the defense. But a tall task, Elijah. A lot of the same story that we felt a week ago going in against Illinois, a really good football team. Minnesota's righted themselves a bit after that undefeated start. They are very mortal when they are down starters, as you saw in their loss to Purdue. When they don't have Mo carrying the football or they're on the road without their starting quarterback, you have a night and day difference with a lot of college football teams. Nebraska's task is to get somebody, maybe two, quarterbacks up to speed to manage the offense, get some points, and hope the defense can play a whale of a game and keep Minnesota down. Just not a lot of juice with the post-Illinois and Nebraska fan base. The interest and support's going to be there, but it's fleeting right now. It's a bit shaky because you don't want to see this season turn. Mickey and Nebraska football put out a video probably about an hour ago, and it had Mickey gathered around. You had Farmer rallying the guys. I need juice from the offense. I need juice from the defense. I need juice from special teams. So some of the vocal leaders were talking before practice today. And Whipple, we'll hear from Coach Whipple on just his thought process with the quarterback situation a week ago and how it can differ going into this week. But Mickey's take today, as he had the team gathered around, is we're still breathing. We're still breathing, and you're not going to just pack it in at Nebraska. From a life lesson standpoint, you lose your job, you have a family to feed, you can't just pack it in. So I don't think that thought has crossed Nebraska's mind, but they're up against it. There's some adversity. It'll make them stronger, but can they be stronger by Saturday?
You talk about adversity. They're going to have a hell of a lot of it on Saturday, assuming that Casey Thompson isn't a go. Now, it does sound like Casey's starting to trend in the right direction, but what kind of reps is he going to have against a
How
defense?
How effective will he be?
How effective can he be only getting mental reps during the week if he is all ready to go? And if I were to handicap it right now, if I was in Vegas, I'd probably say the odds are showing me that I don't think Casey Thompson's going to be suited up on Saturday. I think this injury feels like something that's more than a 1 week process. Now, could that be a different story come a week from Saturday? Time will tell, but based on how I see it right now, I don't think Casey Thompson's going to be a go on Saturday, meaning it's going to be Chubba Purdy and Logan Smothers, two guys who, from what we saw last week, seem like they are head and shoulders below where Casey Thompson's at as a quarterback, which is going to put a lot of pressure on the Husker defense. And I'm sure a topic that we're going to be hitting sometime later this week is what does this Husker defense need to do from a point total point of view in order to give this Nebraska offense a chance. I'm not going to
shutout would be good.
Yeah, a shutout would be phenomenal, but
single digits, even way more. Not as good of a shutout, but it's more acceptable. That's a big ask, especially if the turnover bug bites again, or you're just inept offensively.
And I'm not going to put a specific number on what I think this defense has to do as of right now, but looking at it right now, you're probably going to have to do better on the ground than you did against Chase Brown because. Yeah, I think you did what was expected of you against Chase Brown. You did enough, assuming Casey Thompson was your starting quarterback, to give yourselves a chance against Illinois, but 30 rushes for 150 yards clearly was not enough with an offense that had a backup quarterback with their backs up against the wall on Saturday. So, I mean, if I'm looking at it, you probably have to keep Mo Ibrahim somewhere around 100 yards rushing. You have to keep Tanner Morgan 50%, 60% completion percentage for less than 150, 200 yards. Like, you have a monumental task ahead of you if you're the Husker defense on Saturday, if it is either Chubb or Logan that is the guy under center on Saturday.
Well, and you look at, too, what's Minnesota good at? They're good at getting third downs because it's 3rd and 3 all day. They do well on 1st and 2nd down. Nebraska didn't do a good enough job of getting Illinois off schedule. You got to be better at getting Minnesota off schedule. I'll say this about Illinois, their quarterback, probably apples to apples with Morgan, okay? Just a guy that's experienced, that you're not asking him to go win the game, but make a play or two. And they found their tight end a couple of different times on some first downs to really get them out of their own end. And then you can just kind of play bumper cars with the running game.
And similar to DeVito, I'd say I think Tanner Morgan's strong suit is the fact that if he's not pressured, whether that be the scoreboard or the defensive line, he's not the type of guy who's going to put the ball in danger.
No,
ever.
He's very sound that way. Span forward, a tight end that leads the team. Now, the downfield passing attack for Minnesota isn't great, but they flex this dude out, and he is a tremendously talented tight end, so that's who you got to stop down. There's a guy back in the day, Max Williams, that I think is still in the NFL, that's the one guy, and this was the Jerry Kill era, that Minnesota was going to throw the football to, and it didn't matter. They still got the football to him. You still got to stop it. So whoever draws the straw to cover the Minnesota tight end has got to be good. So you got to live in that 40% conversion rate if you're the Nebraska defense for Minnesota third downs. You got to limit span forward, and you got to keep Mo in check. Other than that...
Well, let's add one more thing. From an offensive point of view, the offense helping out the defense, the offense can't be giving Minnesota's offense short fields.
No.
If the Husker offense is turning the ball over, a shanked punt somewhere from the special teams, the Minnesota offense has a short field. They're that classic Big Ten offense that's going to convert and is going to make you pay. It may not be 7, but it's going to be 3. They're not going to mess up down in your red zone and let you get the ball back if you give them a short field. So that's another huge thing that doesn't really fall on the defense, but you can't put your defense behind the 8 ball and give this Minnesota offense a short field because they'll make you pay, just like just about any Big Ten team will.
Think about this Gopher defense, as stout as they are, they're top 25 good. They're not as good as they've been in past years at getting after the quarterback. So that doesn't mean it'll be easier for Nebraska, whether it's Chubba or it's going to be Logan. Let's hear a little bit from Mark Whipple. And listening to Whip after practice today, let's just say I was not inspired to think it's going to be a good day Saturday. I love his honesty, but Whip's just, you know how he is, the old curmudgeon, and I say that lovingly. And he just, there's not a lot of BS coming out of him, but there's not a lot of, hey, it's going to be okay either. I didn't get that warm, fuzzy feel, but this was Whip on Chubba's performance on Saturday.
Well, I told the whole offense we were disappointed, and probably wasn't fair to Chubba. He did not practice the last 2 days of the week and really wanted to play, and he got hurt, and he's fine now. So going back, I don't know whether I should have or not, and that's why Logan went in the second quarter because I wasn't sure exactly where he was. You know, when I looked at his eyes at halftime, it felt like he was good, but he wasn't really prepared mentally with But I think we let down when Casey went out, and I think that it gave Illinois a boost, and it's just something we got to deal with.
Yeah, the air went out of the joint when Casey got rocked. That said, why? Why go with a guy that missed 2 days of practice last week, and you're going off mental reps, inexperienced kid, and then you're asking him to go save the day, manage against that defense? Now, Whip owned it. Wasn't fair to Casey. Wasn't fair to Chubba. Absolutely. Wasn't fair to the team either. The defense, the special teams, the other 10 on offense, we'll say 11. Chubba wasn't ready, and he shouldn't have been in position. I just, hindsight's easy to sit here and criticize, but I just can't, for the life of me, get a answer as to, well, he throws it. But, well, if he isn't ready and he's been hurt and he's not practiced, I don't care how bad you think Logan throws the football or how little confidence you have in Logan throwing the football or your confidence level in your offensive line to protect or get some sort of seam for a run game. I don't get that call. I think you'll see two quarterbacks good and just figure out a way to get a hot hand, move the football, double down, find Palmer in short pass. I mean, there's 100 different things you can go. You have to adapt so you don't die here. And Nebraska was just not ready. And I just don't know what's going on quarterback development-wise.
And I think it's almost a little bit funny what Mark Whipple just said there, because it's the most old-school football coach thing ever. And maybe he's trying to conceal some things from a presser. Maybe he doesn't want to talk about what's going on behind the scenes. But he said, I went in at halftime, I looked in Chubba's eyes, and I saw in his eyes that he wanted to go. And that's why
everybody wants to play. Can you do the job?
But is that not the most old-school football coach thing ever to say? Like, yeah, I looked into that guy's eyes, and he was ready to go. That's like the most classic, like...
And then there was a turnover at the 30. I mean, okay. And then he would look me in the eye. More from Coach Whipple here as far as changing the offensive game plan.
There's some, but it's also with the guys around. It'll probably more entail how the game's going, on those things. It's a completely different defense than we faced last week. So there's not much, there's carryover, but not really kind of the way that Minnesota plays defense. And they're both really good, just two different styles. So, that we probably had a little bit more in last week because we had an extra week, but we pared it down a little bit more. And as I said, it's a complete different style. It's really what it comes down to. And both are really good. Both are really good teams. They're going to run the ball. You limited chances, and because of where the style is, and you got to make the most of it. And that probably was the biggest disappointment last week was we had the ball in the red zone and turn it over twice.
Well, amen. More from Whipple here on Smothers and his performance in practice.
I thought he had his best 2 days. I think it's something that's just maybe natural when you're third. But the third guy gets reps in the way I do things. Not as many, but I told him, I said it was the best he looked that I've seen him since I've been here. Yesterday and today, both those two guys. It's kind of like, so I'm pleased with that. Yeah, Logan's done well.
You got to make some chicken salad. You got to make some lemonade. I mean, whatever you want to throw in there. And that's not to demean either quarterback, but you're limited. he's been around football long enough that you got to figure something out. And I am, for the life of me, can't find what I would hang my hat on, what's going to give me confidence. What Nebraska's been able to do is give Casey enough time from time to time to hit a big pass play. Okay, that has been your gold standard on offense. Now, can Logan throw the football downfield? Can Chubba throw the football downfield? Yes, right. So one's better than the other. And can you just play pitch and catch with what you have now? Can you use the athleticism of Purdy? And can he be focused, man? Is he going to go in a nervous wreck? Or is he the confident kid that his teammates talk about? And he didn't want to miss his opportunity, but he wasn't ready. And you did a disservice to the team last Saturday by putting him in.
And simply put, I don't think these two guys are going to be able to go in and run the same offense that Casey Thompson does. So if that offense looks the same on Saturday as it has the past couple of weeks, I think it's going to be a long, long day. There's got to be changes.
You can't ask him to do what Casey can do. Mm-hmm. You got to go with what they do well. We'll get Mike Babcock's thoughts. Hail Varsity continues here on a Wednesday, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Hail Varsity Radio on a Wednesday, presented by Currency. Ernest Hausmann, Husker linebacker, going to be with us in about 15 minutes or so. We welcome in Mr. Husker Football with Hail Varsity, Mike Babcock at MD Babs on Twitter. Mike, let's figure this quarterback situation out. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. This is Scruffy Day. That
okay.
Makes me look more like I know what I'm talking about.
Well, if that's Scruffy Day for you, that makes my Scruffy Days feel a hell of a lot worse.
Stubble is underrated. I love stubble, but there's a point where stubble goes beyond stubble, and it's it gets a little bit too gnarly.
I'll be that way by Saturday.
You go for it. You just keep on growing, Babbers. You do your thing.
Yeah.
Okay, put a game plan together for me, Mike, on offense.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is that I think Purdy is more he's more the type of quarterback that Thompson is than Smothers.
Sure.
And I think, you agree with that. And I think that Mark Whipple's offense is more in tune with throwing the ball with those two guys than it is with Smothers' ability to run the ball, which I think the offense is Whipple's. It should be. He's the offensive coordinator. But I would have liked to have seen, and I don't think that they have put enough of this in to do it, the opportunity for Smothers to get in there and have that running threat at quarterback to give you a little more opportunity in the running game, because I think that's something that Nebraska is going to have to – we talk about this every week, but you've got to establish some kind of a running game. If you don't do that, you're going to end up in a situation like Nebraska has been in the last 2 weeks, or the last two games. The plays were 70-49 on Saturday. And, we talked about this last week, I think, is that you've got to get possessions. You've got to pick up third downs. You've got to have some control of the ball. And Nebraska didn't do that. And then you add to that 4 turnovers, and you end up with a result that you did against a very good Illinois team.
Mike, is the option on Saturday the solution to the offensive woes to pull out the triple option for these quarterbacks? I say that with a smile on my face, by the way, for those listening at home not watching the stream.
Yeah, because they're not prepared. They're not prepared to do that.
Well, Minnesota's not going to be prepared to stop it then, right?
Can you run it?
It would be a shock to Minnesota's defense if Nebraska came out and ran some kind of a triple option thing, which I'm not saying that you should do that, but I would like to have an opportunity in a system that you've practiced. And I don't think that they've practiced that because the depth chart has an or, after that second team quarterback, Purdy or
Logan.
Logan. But there's no or. It's clear Smothers is the number 3 quarterback and Purdy is the number 2 quarterback. And that's the way I'm sure that's the way they practice. I'm sure that some of the reps that Logan is getting are mental reps, a term that came up the other day, which I hadn't heard since Bill Callahan was the coach. And the other thing is that I think Mickey used this term on Monday or on Tuesday talking about the quarterback situation, and he said Purdy was a gunslinger, meaning he throws the ball, and that's what they're prepared to do, I think.
Mike, do you think it's can't do it, won't do it with the run game? And I ask that where I know that the Whipple's a pro-style guy and a little West Coasty, and it works when you're healthy, and it works when, Casey's back there throwing it. You don't have that. And has he seen enough? And he's seen way more than any of us. Has he seen enough of this offensive line to where he doesn't trust him to run it? Or this is my system, this is what I know, so this is how we're going to live or die?
I would guess that the offensive line hasn't shown that it can do a good job in the running game, can move things. For one, he can look at it from that standpoint. But again, I go back to I think his offense, he's more comfortable with this kind of pass-oriented thing. The thing that's concerning about that is, and I know that you go into a game, and Illinois goes into a game very much aware of Trey Palmer, but 1 catch for 1 yard for Trey Palmer, that boggles my mind how that happened. Regardless of whether you're focusing on him, then did that open up things for other people? I was stunned by that, and I didn't see him. I tried to look and make sure. It didn't seem like he was in for as many snaps as I thought he would be. And here you got a guy that was, the week before, he was the talk of the nation. He's on the Blitnikoff Award watch list and everything like that. And he gets 1 catch for 1 yard. That I didn't understand that.
You would think to scheme him open or throw him short or go Tecmo Bowl and put him in the backfield like you do with Jerry Rice. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff against the wall here, but no.
Credit Illinois' defense. I'll do that definitely, and it's like a replay of the Illinois game in a lot of ways, because Minnesota's defense is ranked in the top 25 nationally in all the major categories, and you got Ibrahim, to run the ball. It's the same kind of thing. He's got like 16 consecutive games of 100 yards rushing. He missed the Purdue game. Otherwise, he'd be over 1,000 yards. It's kind of part 2 against a Minnesota team that, didn't have much trouble with Rutgers, 31-0. And I know that they had that 3-game losing streak there, but you look at that, Purdue, and then at Illinois, and then at Penn State.
With a backup quarterback.
Tough stretch, yes.
Well,
and then you come back and you 31-0 against Rutgers. So I think Nebraska's going to have its hands full in a big way on Saturday because of that and because of what you guys have talked about, the quarterback situation.
Well, Mike, what's your worry meter at when you look at what happened last week with Nebraska's quarterback situation this week? It just doesn't feel like these last 5 games of the season, Nebraska is set up in a place where they're going to be able to really compete with these teams, just simply for the fact of what they do well is what Nebraska generally does poorly, and that's defensively. These teams are all solid, fundamentally sound, and offensively they like to run the football, which is, at least what I've seen, has been the weak point of this Husker defense.
Well, yeah, and let's say one more thing about Casey Thompson. If he doesn't play on Saturday, which I think as Elijah said, there's a good chance that he's not going to play. I think they're maybe talking about him just from the standpoint of let Minnesota think about one more guy, what they might do. But then if he doesn't play against Minnesota, you think he plays against Michigan? Do you put him on the field or do you hold him back so that you got him down the stretch?
Well, you need to find 3 wins.
Yeah.
So that's the reality. Speaking of that, Mike, a thought on just where Mickey's at, where you think Trev's at, the Arizona State mentioned yesterday. I think Arizona State's looking at a lot of coaches, but Mickey's shown the ability in a tough situation to put it together, but the exam isn't over either.
No, it isn't. And, the dynamic of this coaching situation, you got Arizona State. Auburn hadn't got anybody yet, right?
Not yet.
So I think that the options for Nebraska are impacted by 2 other programs, particularly Auburn, I would say, as to who's going to be available, what candidates are available for you at Nebraska. I remain a Mickey Joseph guy. I'd like to see Nebraska figure out a way to keep Mickey and Bill Bush, and let's see where they can take this program, give them an opportunity. But as we've talked before, too, that's probably not going to happen. The sense I get is it's probably not going to happen. But I'm usually wrong about stuff, so that people can be optimistic from that standpoint.
Mike, if you take the Husker hat off and you look at the jobs that are open right now, Auburn, Wisconsin, Arizona State, I guess we'll throw Colorado in here, and then Nebraska. Well, which position, if you're a college football coach, just had himself a couple good seasons, looking to make a move maybe up in the college football world, which job is most appealing to you?
Well, I've got kind of tunnel vision, but, okay, Auburn, do you want to go into the Southeastern Conference and try to establish yourself in an extremely competitive, difficult conference? Probably, if you're a young guy and you want to establish yourself, I don't think that's where you go.
Well, especially at a school with very demanding boosters like Auburn is.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so I'm eliminating Auburn from that list. Then I look at Arizona State. Now you're in a conference there's a lot of uncertainty there, right? What's going to happen with that conference? Where are you going to be with that? So I'm maybe looking at eliminating that one. I mean, I think for me, it probably comes down to Nebraska and Wisconsin. For my mind, and again, I'm tunnel vision, I think Nebraska is the most attractive of those, except for the fact that, and this is what I like about Mickey Joseph, he understands what it means to be the coach here. I think if you are not familiar with the program and you come in here, you don't realize it's the same kind of expectations that you're talking about with Auburn. People have lofty expectations. People remember when Nebraska was good and use that as the sounding board to evaluate this coach. And that's tough. That is very tough.
Mike Babcock with us. Follow Mike on Twitter at MDBabs. Read him with HailVarsity.com and magazine. About 20 seconds here, Mike. What's coming up with the magazine and the web?
We're working on the magazine. A couple weeks it's coming out, and it's going to be a basketball issue. And there's going to be some good basketball stuff in there. Reason for optimism. Certainly the women's team looks like it's going to be competitive, and we hope that the men's team kind of is what people say they've seen from them.
Mike, we'll talk this weekend. Thanks for the time, bud.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
A few minutes, Ernest Hausmann with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Ernest, big game against Minnesota. Let's go back to last weekend and thoughts on the Illini.
It was a really tough game. We got everything that we expected from Illinois to run offensively. We knew that they were going to come in there, try to control the pace of the game, use their offense, and just chew that clock with their offensive scheme. had a couple tough breaks with field position. But, I thought overall, we played a tough game. We knew it had to be a physical game, and then the most physical team was going to win the game. And, we had I know there's a few plays that we'd like to take back, but, for the most part, we played a defensively sound game that we thought. Obviously with the result, we aren't satisfied with the result. There's a few things we got to clean up for the game in Minnesota.
Tell me about your progression from Dublin to now and that jump, how you process going from high school to Big Ten football and not a lot of downtime in between.
Yeah, it was definitely a jump from high school to college, and just a preparation standpoint, it's been really good to have those veteran guys with me here. They've done a tremendous job with me, just preparing the right way for each game. And I know my understanding with each game is going to be new. I'm going to be a lot of new things I'll be seeing for the first time. So just being with them, being with those group of guys, and just preparing the right way has really helped me make the jump and each week progressively improve just my football knowledge.
Who's helped you the most? Who's taken you under their wing?
Yeah, I'd say, I think all of them have done a really good job. With being behind Nick, he's been really just with me a lot with just being that position. I've always just being there right there with me. Have any question, just always being there willing to help. Just studying film together, just going throughout the week progressions, all those group of guys has really helped me through all those veterans and the coaching stuff. Take
me through how you prepare through the week. What's the process like?
We're getting the game plan Tuesday. We'll get some of the cut-ups done on Monday. So we'll come in on Monday as a linebacker group. Each have different schedules on that Monday. So we'll kind of as a group get down there at some point throughout the day. First, get a look at kind of what we'll be seeing throughout the week. As the week progresses, we'll come in as a group in the afternoon. I'm going to watch film together so we can all just ask questions and bounce feedback on each other and how we're going to, see some issues that come up and how we're going to solve those things. And then, we'll, for me, especially being all brand new, I have to usually in the evening, I have to go watch it again just to make sure I'm sure all the things. And the thing is with me, I just have to be patient with myself, knowing that, hey, this is the first time I'm seeing these things, and I'm going to make a mistake, but I know I have to make the mistake going 100% full speed during practice, so then I know that I can fix the mistake later throughout the week.
Have you been frustrated this year?
I'm pretty hard on myself. I expect myself to play at a high level, but at the same time, I have to tell myself, hey, this is the first time you've seen these things. I have to understand that I'm going to make these mistakes, but then at the same time, I hold myself to a high standard that, hey, I make this mistake, I'm not going to make it again.
A few minutes here, Ernest Hausmann with this Hail Varsity Radio. What do you think's allowed you to get on the field so quickly?
Just kind of just how I prepare and what I expect. For me, it's a fine balance of not knowing what I'm doing, being new, but then fixing it at the same time. So allowing myself to make the mistake, but then at the same time, having a solution, how I'm going to fix that mistake is what I think has helped me be able to go on the field, just knowing that, throughout the week, making the mistakes and knowing that, hey, when I'm out there, I'm not going to make that same mistake.
Coach Root, how's he been able to coach you up and get the best out of you?
Yeah, Coach Root's done a really good job with me since day one coming into here at the program, just guiding me along the way, not just giving me the whole picture at the same time, just new step by step. Coming here early was just really huge, been really great for me. And, just being able to not have everything thrown at me at one time. And then spring ball was just really, one of the best things for me, because spring ball, you're getting everything thrown at you, but you're having it slow progression, and you're not going to be just every single offense being thrown at you. So, I'm really thankful I came early. And Coach Hughes has done a tremendous job with me, just, developing me, becoming the linebacker I am today.
Guys say that things can slow down, and then once it slows down, you can really play downhill. What speed limit do you think things are at for you right now?
Yeah, things are definitely starting to slow down for me, absolutely. Just as this late in the season, you kind of see all these different looks, and you kind of, your brain progression before the snap and stuff like that has been really able to just really dial in, because as you gain a better understanding for your defensive call, you can really see what the offense is going to try to do with that call. So just instead of more focused on what you're doing, you're able to see on what your issues on your call and defense and what offense is seeing. So, if you're going against offense, they're really smart offensive coordinators that, they're going to try to attack you on these defenses. So being able to know that pre-snap, so you can kind of get not a guess. We can kind of see what a team's going to do is help you play faster.
Yeah, are you able to be comfortable with communication, what you're asked to do out there? I know Luke's back, but there was a time where it was you out there and you were kind of having to run the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Like again, it goes back to preparation standpoint. Just being able to put yourself in those calls and being able to put yourself what that offense can try to do. We stress it a lot. As linebackers, we have to be able to communicate to the D line and the secondary as well, and through each other. So, being able to just be with a group of guys through preparation, we can kind of talk things out pre-snap, and we can kind of just know, hey, this is what we're gonna be doing. So we kind of just play off each other.
Ernest Hausmann with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Thoughts on Minnesota, their line, their running game? It's going to be another physical ball game Saturday morning.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be another physical test for us. We know what they're going to do offensively, and it's going to be a really detailed gap sound game, just kind of like Illinois. With the run game, it's. You know what you're gonna get, so it's gonna be really important for us to just know gap we have and just keep our gap integrity and just play. We're going up against a really good back. Mm-hmm. He does a really good job playing with their scheme, and so we know the offensive coordinator is gonna. They do a lot of check with me, so they're gonna really see what type of defense we're in, and they're gonna call the best play that's for that. So it's going to be really important for us to just be really a gap sound this week.
How often do you get isolated or picked on with back out of the backfield coverage responsibilities? How's that process been?
Yeah, I know just knowing kind of what our defense is, and we know, especially these teams that are kind of just knowing, hey, we're getting a man look. They're going to try to just get that back out, get kind of just isolate, kind of maybe it's a mesh play, or just give yourself that one-on-one look. So kind of knowing that pre-snap, hey, this is kind of the look you're going to get. And again, that preparation, you can kind of predict that's what they're going to try to do.
Last thought here, Coach Bush, what's he brought to the defense, and how's it been playing for him and in the direction he wants to go with it?
Yeah, I think Coach Bush has brought definitely a different aspect to our defense for sure. With kind of different calls, he's I'd say he's allowed some of the things, especially to simplify some things down for the back end of things. So, he's definitely brought different aspects of the game and different wrinkles in there for our defense. And, I think it's helped us in different areas to excel in.
Ernest Hausmann, how much of Columbus has made their way down to cheer you on for the home games?
Been a great support. I've had really great support. My family, they've made they made it pretty much every game I've been to except that Ireland game. So I've had tremendous support from my family and my Columbus support.
Ernest, thanks. Good to speak with you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to spend time with the Husker freshman backer. He's done a great job this year and bounced back, and he's going to be ready to go again on Saturday against Minnesota. Hail Varsity continues. We'll wind down this first hour presented by Currency.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio, winding down hour one, presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Brad Edwards, college football insider, next hour. Thoughts on the Nebraska gig, the Auburn opening, how that plays with Nebraska, their candidate list, and then, of course, Mickey. A good write-up by Adam Rittenberg as well. He kind of put a percentage on a number of these openings and the current interims, what the percentage says. Right now he's got Mickey at a 25% chance to get the job, and I think that seems fair. That might seem a little bit high. He had a chance for a tipping point against Illinois. Now, it didn't help that your quarterback went down. What can you do this Saturday with your backup options? Can you get anything going run game-wise? It's kind of like an old mower. Can you finally get that bastard to pull start? And you'll need to hand. Just think about the accumulation, and Babbers nailed it with time of possession. Coach McBride hinted at it in Monday's show, where think about how this is stacking up, where you got outpossessed on top of the battering ram physicality by Illinois. You had minimal time of possession against Purdue.
Has Nebraska won time of possession in any game this year?
They were close against
North Dakota.
Yeah, North Dakota, probably. Georgia.
North Dakota had them pretty solidly in the first half, and then Nebraska made a good effort at it in the second half.
Georgia Southern, I know it was not good against Northwestern in Dublin. And probably Indiana. I'll look that up. I've got it right here. Reminder about Red Zone tickets. Fun since 2001. Do you have tickets to buy? Tickets to sell. Red Zone tickets buys and sells tickets for all types of events, and that's something to keep in mind with Husker football, Husker volleyball. Do you want to go check out your favorite NFL team? How about Creighton basketball this year, as they are a Final Four favorite? Theater, concerts, and, of course, the College World Series. Omaha is where your friends at Red Zone Tickets are located. They are local. They are down the road for you, and they have the A+ Better Business Bureau rating. How do they get that? Well, they take care of you, and they offer a 100% guarantee on all orders. You'll receive authentic tickets to the experiences you want to be at, and check off that item on your bucket list. They can make that happen. Create the memories that last a lifetime. Visit RedZoneTickets.com today. RedZoneTickets.com.
I've looked it up. Nebraska had the time of possession advantage against both Georgia Southern and Rutgers. However, they did not have more than a 2-minute advantage in either of those games. Their biggest time of possession on the year was the Indiana game, in which they got 34 minutes of possession as compared to Indiana's 26.
That worked. That helped. So, hey, I don't envy the position the Nebraska offense is in. It's been really feast or famine all year based on the big play, but you still have some of those weapons. It's got to figure out a way to get them the football. And as good as Minnesota is, and they are dynamite with their edge tackling, their corners, their safeties, do a fantastic job of tackling. Still, though, that doesn't mean you can't flip it out there to Anthony Grant and get him the football. See if you can't soften things up with a little yant between the tackles. And if you do play two quarterbacks, you've got that run element with Smothers. Maybe you bust a big one. It's not impossible. Just really, really uphill. Brad Edwards, college football insider, with us to kick off Hour 2. Evan Bland next hour with Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back with you. ESPN Lincoln, Facebook and Twitter. Also the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Longtime friend of the show and college football insider and author of Dynasty by the Numbers, Brad Edwards, back with us. Get some thoughts from him on the college football playoff. He's known that world well for a while, and some of the coaching carousel thoughts that exist. Brad, good to spend time with you. How are you?
I'm doing well, Chris. It's been a long time since we chatted, and unfortunately, not much has changed in Nebraska football since the last time we chatted, except for the head coach. But I'm rooting for you, man. It's just I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know it is possible. It is possible, and hopefully they'll get there.
You know, and we talked before Ireland back in August, and Elijah and I are both. We're somewhere in the middle between, man, you blink and it's already 8 games into the season, but it's felt like 100 years this season.
They did win a close game, though.
They won a couple.
A
couple in a row.
Okay, so I remember the first one. I was like, hey, wait, how did that happen?
Mickey Joseph, baby.
You know, baby steps.
Well, Brad, let me get your take though on just Nebraska football as a whole. It feels like it's maybe starting to trend upwards, but just what's your take from a national perspective? I think me as a Nebraskan sitting here, I've been rooting for Tennessee this year because they've been down in the mud for so long. It's good to see them kind of reclaim their former glory. Yeah. It gives Nebraska fans some hope. Yeah, exactly as you say. What's the national perspective on Nebraska?
Well,
has this finally reached the point where a college football neutral from around the country is starting to root for Nebraska to get this thing right again?
Oh, I think Nebraska has been in that spot for a few years now where, the younger generation doesn't remember Nebraska being great, and there wouldn't, be any type of tendency to root against them because they've won too much. I think this would be a team that even the national media would embrace very quickly. I mean, it's like how everybody always wants Texas to be back, and they win one big game. It's like, oh,
not here.
No, but I mean, Nebraska's just got to win a big game, right? Like, it's just if they can do it, I think a lot of people will be rooting for them to succeed. And I think Tennessee is a good example of what we've probably talked about a few times over the years, which is that if you look at college football, a lot of times between number 10 in the nation and number 60. There's not that big of a gap. It's just really small stuff that separates those teams. And it's just doing the little things and doing them consistently well. And obviously Nebraska has been one of those teams that did the little things very poorly for many years in a row now. And that's why they are where they are. But you look at how many games they've had a chance to win against top 25 opponents in recent years, and it tells you they're not that far off. But I do believe this. If you're going to get to where Tennessee is right now, and Tennessee's not there by fluke. Obviously, they have a win over Alabama. They have been blowing out bad teams all season, which is what a really good team is supposed to do. But if you're going to get to where they are and not just in the top 25 and linger in the top 25 all season, if you want to have a chance to make a run, you've got to be able to recruit at a high level. And when I say recruit, the good news is these days that includes the transfer portal. And so you don't necessarily have to go out and sign a bunch of 5-stars out of high school. If you can get the right guys out of the portal who can help you at certain key positions, that could be enough. But you got to have overall kind of at least 4-star level talent. And I think that's where that line so often gets drawn between the haves and the have-nots is the ability to get those players consistently.
Brad Edwards with us here on Hail Varsity Radio at J. Brad Edwards. Well, you know the SEC well. You know Mickey Joseph from his LSU days. And what Mickey's been able to do in the portal is get a guy like Casey Thompson. He's really dinged up, so he's not likely available Saturday. Nebraska was leading a top 25 opponent last week until he went down. Trey Palmer's a 5-star that was at LSU that came to Lincoln. And then you have a former Florida State running back in Grant. So Mickey was instrumental in short order in bringing the skilled talent here. Nebraska's been problematic, Brad, on the lines of scrimmage. So there's that in the Big Ten. But your take on Mickey, and just from afar, I know he's the interim coach, but there's a push by a lot of fans that want him as the permanent coach. Now, that's cooled a bit after Illinois, but you've seen a lot of instances where the interim guy is popular till he's not.
Well, and unfortunately, I can't think of too many examples where the interim guy turned out to be the right choice. Dabo would be one. And Dabo was a guy when he was named head coach. Or named interim. I didn't think there was any chance he was going to get the job full time. So you will find some, but I think most of the cases where there is an interim coach who is hired, it turns out to be the wrong choice. But you never know, and that's the thing about it. What are they looking for? What's Trev looking for? I don't know if he's set on somebody, having head coaching experience at the FBS level, at the Power 5 level, or is he willing to take a chance on someone who just loves Nebraska?
He wants a builder.
And obviously can recruit. And there are a lot of different ways you could go with this, but ultimately that's what it's going to come down to, is who he and whoever else may be I don't know who else has a say in this, how much power Trev has overall in the hire, but it's that's really what it is what are his base criteria? What are the bare minimums that he's looking for, and whether Joseph's a candidate right now, he might already be eliminated. It depends on what Trev's looking for. So that's kind of where we are, and there's really no way to know that without him saying it. But I think he has certain basic traits that are very attractive to you, but at the same time, everybody feels a lot better if a coach has won. But I mean, your last coach had gone undefeated. Had gone undefeated and had a team ranked in the top 5 at the end of the season, and that didn't work out. So there's no method is foolproof.
Well, Brad, really fast here, if you don't mind me jumping in, Schmidty, if you were in the AD chair right now, which hire or which couple of guys would you be looking at here for this Nebraska job? I know there's not any guy out there that comes with no risk whenever you ask him to lead the program, but what guys do you think have maybe the least amount of risk in terms of getting this Husker football program turned around?
Well, I haven't really thought about it specific to Nebraska, but what I would tell you is this, is that whether it's the head coach or the offensive coordinator, you need someone who's going to be imaginative on offense, who knows how to scheme, because in the Big Ten, at least at the beginning, you're going to have some personnel mismatches on the wrong side. Like if you're going to compete with some of those teams over in the East, not necessarily the West, but in the East, you're going to have to find a way to beat teams that have better players than you do, and that's going to take some very creative offense. Aside from that, it's someone who has the ability to bring kids in and get them to love Nebraska without having grown up really knowing Nebraska. You know what I mean? Like it's at the point now where, as we said, it's been so long that you're not going to have, as you know, you're not going to have many kids in the state who are at that 4 or 5 star level coming out of high school. You're not going to be able to build a program around players from Nebraska and bordering states. You're going to need to go out west, go south, maybe go east. I know Nebraska's gotten a lot of really good players out of the East over the years. So you can go out and grab guys from different places, but it's just you got to have someone who has the ability to sell Nebraska's potential, because unfortunately that's what it is right now. Now we're selling potential. We're not selling actual results. But it's been done. Look, if you look at Tennessee. Sure, Tennessee has a great history, too. Not at the level Nebraska does, but it's got a good history. But you could look at Tennessee and say, hey, they have to play Alabama and Georgia every single year. Every single year. Why would you take that job? Why would you think that you could win there? Because you're not going to out-recruit those two. And yet, at least for 1 year, Josh Heupel's looking pretty good doing it. It doesn't mean he'll succeed long-term. But that's the type of thing that you got to be able to find someone who sees that vision in spite of whatever the odds may be, and is excited to take that job. And like I said, I don't know who it is, but I think you do have to think outside the box a little bit, because I don't think the most proven guys out there are going to have Nebraska near the top of their list.
Brett Edwards with us. Trev's vision is somebody that can build line of scrimmage, develop, and then go get some of the skill. And Mickey can bring the skill. He's an incredible recruiter. Brad, names I'm going to throw at you as far as that may be looking or leave or get approached with a big old fat blank check. O'Brien, Aranda, Leipold, and then Stoops at Kentucky. Could any of those fit in Lincoln?
I'm not crazy about O'Brien. I assume you're talking about Bill O'Brien.
Yes.
I've just seen with him at Alabama, he has, let's put it this way, I think he's more influenced by his time in the NFL than his time in college.
Okay.
And I don't think that style of offense is what Nebraska needs right now. Who else did you say? You said Leipold?
Leipold at Kansas, Aranda at Baylor, and then Stoops at Kentucky.
I mean, I'll say this: I am a firm believer in Mark Stoops. He has built and sustained at a place where nobody since Bear Bryant in the 50s has been able to sustain anything. So the question is, would he consider Nebraska a place where he has a real chance to do something? I mean, realistically, at Kentucky, they're half the conference you're not going to be able to out-recruit. Mm-hmm. So is there a better chance to do that at Nebraska? Sure. But is it so much better that it would be worth making a move? I mean, he's in a really comfortable spot where no one's expecting him to win 10 games. But I think I haven't gone through this exercise lately, but I might consider Mark Stoops a top 10 coach in college football. Leipold, I tell you got to like what you've seen in a short amount of time that he's been a head coach. It's just, after the Scott Frost thing, I just think I want to see somebody do it for a little bit more than to just buy into, someone who maybe caught lightning in a bottle. Although he's done it at 2 schools, which is better than 1. And then Aranda, I tell you what, I'm becoming more and more convinced that Dave Aranda knows what he's doing. He hasn't been there a long time either, but, man, he lost a lot and has kept that thing going. And it was somewhat of a mess when he took it over as well. So those are good names. Mm-hmm. I think outside of O'Brien, I really like all those names. And if you can get one of them, I think there's a lot to be excited about.
Brad Edwards with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. Brad, about 3 minutes left here. Let's sneak in some college football playoff thoughts before we get you out. Your reaction, Clemson sneaking in ahead of Michigan into the top 4 of the first college football playoff rankings.
Not surprising, just knowing what the committee looks at. And Clemson has a couple wins over teams the committee has ranked at the back end of their top 25. And they're just trying to make a statement about schedule strength. Obviously, Michigan's got to play Ohio State down the road. And the Penn State game was in Ann Arbor, so I get it. Now, who would I take to win if those two teams played? I'd take Michigan right now. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I would probably also take a whole lot of teams over teams that they're ranked behind. So, and that's not really the way the committee's looking at it. That's not what they're doing. But to me, I tell you what. Here, let me just say this, since we've only got a couple minutes left. Every year when the first rankings come out, we always look for these like nightmare scenarios, the train wreck that the committee is going to have to deal with. And this is mine. This is what I want to see happen. I want Georgia to lose one game, whether that's to Tennessee this weekend or the SEC championship. I want Georgia to be a one-loss team that is not a conference champion, and I want Oregon to run the table. And I want to hear people across the country attempt mental gymnastics to convince themselves and convince others that Oregon deserves to be in the playoff over a team that has the same number of losses and beat them by 46 points. I mean, I can promise you if that happens, there will be people who will convince themselves and will try to justify that in some way Oregon is a better team than Georgia. And it's absolutely laughable, but that's where we are. And this is why everybody wants a 12-team playoff, so you don't have to deal with scenarios like that. But that's what I'm hoping for. That's the train wreck for me, because in my mind, I don't care if Georgia's the third choice out of the SEC. You have to put them in before you can put Oregon in.
Brad, 10 seconds. Where you leaning? Tennessee at Georgia -8 dogs.
I tell you what, I'm leaning Tennessee. I really am. I like what they do offensively, and I think Georgia has some weaknesses defensively that haven't been exposed. I don't think they're as good defensively as they were last year. Well, I know they're not, but I don't think they're as close as people think that they are.
Brad Edwards, college football insider at @JBradEdwards on Twitter. Brad, we'll do this again, man. We'll give you a holler here, and thanks for talking some college ball with us.
All right, great talking to you guys again. Really enjoyed it.
Appreciate him. There he is, Brad Edwards. Evan Bland, the quarterback merry-go-round. We'll get into that next.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmidty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio. Time to say hi to Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald. We'll talk Nebraska, Minnesota, and find Evan on Twitter at Evan Bland, OWH, and Omaha.com is where you read him. Evan, interesting week with Nebraska, Minnesota, point spreads and unsettled at quarterback, and my oh my, what's your crystal ball say?
Well, says there's never a dull moment around here, that's for sure. But in terms of the quarterback situation this weekend, to me, I think it's probably going to be Chubba Purdy, just from what we've heard from Mickey Joseph and Mark Whipple about how he's sort of been held out. And, man, it's been interesting to sort of hear some of the backstory leading up to that game against Illinois, though, with Whipple today saying that Chubba hadn't practiced late last week, and they weren't sure that he was ready to go late in the first half, which is why they went with Logan Smothers. So not a great situation, not where you want to be when you're talking about staring down the barrel of, four really good defenses here, starting with Minnesota this weekend. But, 15-point underdog, that would tell you that Vegas doesn't think Casey Thompson's going to start, or if he does play, that he won't be maybe effective because of the injuries that he's had. And it's just tough. As Mark Whipple said today, too, man, when it rains, it pours. And as much struggle as Nebraska's had in so many different phases already, you add the injuries to it and you ramp up to the level of competition, and it's going to make for a tough November.
Evan Bland with us, Hail Varsity Radio. I'm surprised. I guess I shouldn't be, because they clearly feel better about Chubba's throwing ability with the fit in the offense. That said, the guy was out for a couple of practices towards the end of the week, and they still went with him. I guess I'm shocked when they went with Logan, and then they said, well, okay, Chubba, are you ready to go? Let's see how you do in the second half, and it didn't work out. I expect better from Nebraska and the quarterback this week. They'll have more time to prep, get him ready to go, but you just don't see that real often. If a guy's missed time due to injury, you don't go to him. In a lot of instances, I don't think I've seen that in a while.
No, it was unusual for sure, and I think a lot of it has to do with the depth that they feel like they have or don't have behind him. And Mickey Joseph and Mark Whipple were both pretty blunt about the fact that the guys they have that are experienced are the guys they're going to go with, and everyone else is either too young or too hurt to be considered. And the Logan Smothers conversation is interesting because, you think about some of the assessments that coaches had that are no longer on the staff. I mean, Mario Verduzco, back in the day, overhauled his throwing motion. Matt Lubick felt like he was a good option runner, but maybe not somebody that they wanted to rely on with his arm. So I think that part has sort of held true, and it's nothing against the kid. I mean, he's as tough as they come, and he went through some injuries in high school that he played through, and the games that he has played at Nebraska, he's sort of established himself as a leader. And that game against Iowa, for 3 quarters, he looked like he was playing inspired football. But I think it's in some ways just sort of a reminder of how different the offense is now from what it was. This is someone with a skill set built for more of a spread attack as opposed to this kind of slinging West Coast style look that Nebraska does now. And I think the other thing that coaches didn't mention today, but I've got to wonder too how much different of a challenge it is to run the offense from the offensive line's perspective if you're putting Smothers out there. Just the way that you block the mentality of that of somebody who's trying to run the ball is a lot different than pass protecting and trying to just keep a pocket clean and that sort of thing. So a lot of differences there. I think the other thing worth noting is, Mark Whipple chose Chubba Purdy from the transfer portal in the offseason. That was his guy. That was somebody that he knew, somebody he had a relationship with. And I think he was surprised at how nervous and jittery and maybe unprepared in some ways that Chubba Purdy was on Saturday. And, ultimately, I think the interesting question for this weekend then is how much is a week of reps worth?
Evan, I think it's a reasonable expectation that we're probably going to see both of those quarterbacks in the game at some point on Saturday, whether it's just spot rolls for Smothers or whether there is a true split remains to be seen. But do you think it's fair to say that as of right now, we should expect Chubba Purdy to be the number one guy rolling out there despite the struggles that he faced against Illinois?
That's my read, at least, yeah. I mean, the coaches haven't ruled out Casey Thompson, and you never know what his situation might be. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot of clarity on how serious the hand injury is or if that could linger. And, of course, there's the fact that it was the same hand that he had off-season surgery on, from that thumb from a year ago. So you just don't really know what his status is. But, yeah, I mean, just the way that the coaches talk about Purdy and Smothers, I would lean toward Chubba this weekend. I think they like his leadership style and ability. He's been a popular kid in the locker room. And, again, he's someone who I think it's just easy to think of as sort of being more experienced because he was in that competition with Casey Thompson in the offseason. But, you break it down, he's got one career start. And that came at Florida State, just the way that Logan Smothers has one career start. They both played in like 8 or 9 college games total. And then you add to the fact that I think people may forget that Purdy missed most of the spring with a foot injury too, that limited him to mental reps and having to watch things from the sidelines. So in a lot of ways, he's been viewed as sort of, a possible quarterback of the future for Nebraska. But I think sort of lost in all that is the reminder that there's a lot of work for him to do now. And he has been behind for all the reasons that I just laid out. And I think that showed up on Saturday. And again, we'll see how much of that gap can be closed even with just 1 week against a pretty good defense coming up.
So with the defensive side of the ball, Nebraska needs what? What type of effort? What's a point total that they got to hover around here to get? We don't know what Nebraska's offense is going to do, but defensively, what do you like about Nebraska's chances to slow Mo and company down?
Well, I think what plays to their benefit is it's a similar task to what they had last week against Illinois, and quite honestly, it's a similar task to what they're going to have the rest of the season with Michigan and Wisconsin and Iowa. I mean, you're talking about dominant defensive teams who, on offense, want to lean on the run, have elite rushers, have strong offensive lines, and who won't necessarily beat you with the big play. So I don't think if you're Nebraska's defense, you need to worry about the explosive play from Minnesota. What you need to worry about is getting them behind schedule at some point. So whether that's a tackle for loss on first down, whether that's a no gain on second down, somehow you got to get them into a third and uncomfortable situation. And when you look at what the Gophers have done, it's been the opposite. I mean, they're getting 4 yards a pop, and it's no coincidence that they're leading the country in third down conversions at nearly 60% of a pace in doing that. And so somewhere along the way, you're going to have to get a stop. That goes back to all the normal things we talk about with this defense. You have to be sound tackling. You have to stay in your gaps. Minnesota isn't going to give it away. It's not going to be easy. I mean, their 5 linemen on offense have started every game together. They're all at least 6'4", 300 pounds. So this is a big, experienced group with a running back who has gone over 100 yards in every game he's played for like 3 years, going back to 2019. So it's a big challenge, but I think if nothing else for Nebraska, maybe it can find some solace in the fact that it's a definable challenge. Like, what Minnesota wants to do. Now you just have to go out and stop it.
What does a successful day against Mo Ibrahim look like for this Husker defense? I think it's got to be fewer yardage than what Nebraska allowed to Chase Brown, just whenever you look at what Nebraska's probably going to have offensively here. But what does a successful day look like to you?
Yeah, I think Chase Brown's probably a good comp on that. I mean, what do they allow? I think about 150 yards rushing to him on like 30 carries. So, something similar to that, I think. I mean, Nebraska's seen him. I think this will be the 4th time they've seen him. He's had 6 rushing scores against them already. Small back, hard to bring down. People, I don't remember if it was Fleck or somebody else sort of compared him to trying to tackle a bowling ball with razor blades on him. Like, it's just not a comfortable, easy thing to do. To me, Minnesota has fewer options in the passing game than what Illinois did. I mean, they had Isaiah Williams and could go a couple of different directions, but Minnesota in the passing game, they essentially have their tight end, Brevin Spann-Ford, and some receivers who just are sort of possession-type receivers for them this year. So, I mean, I think your focus has to be on Ibrahim, and maybe he will get his. Maybe it'll be a similar line to Brown where he runs it 25 or 30 times for 140 yards. I think Nebraska would probably take that if they can limit what Minnesota's doing in the passing game. I think what's tripped Nebraska up at times has been playing teams like Purdue, where there's been so much deception in how they run things, and then that's led to a lot of confusion defensively. I don't think that's necessarily the case here. I think this is more of a test for Nebraska, where this is about being physical, where it's about sort of that battle of wills. It's about being, just sticking to what you do, staying in your gap, not trying to play hero ball, because once you get bored and sort of try to anticipate or cheat, that's when he can cut back and make a big play. So I think that's the challenge. It is more physical for Nebraska than maybe it has been in recent weeks.
Real quick, Evan, your take on Mickey and his candidacy for Arizona State.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a surprise. I mean, a lot's been made this year about Mickey sort of having this on-the-job interview with Nebraska, but everybody else is watching too. There are other openings around the country. What he's done in terms of sort of firing up Nebraska, what his reputation is as a recruiter, is still out there. That's a valuable skill set, I think, especially in today's age of the transfer portal and NIL. Having somebody who can recruit and acquire talent the way that he has is important. That said, I don't think that just because there's been contact means that there's an offer on the way or that there's even interest from Mickey Joseph's side necessarily. I think that's something that there's a reason oftentimes these sorts of stories get out there. I don't think that'll necessarily add pressure for Nebraska to speed up its search or bring a conclusion to its search, but I do think it gives the Husker brass a little bit something extra to think about, and just to maybe remind them that it's no guarantee that if Mickey Joseph's not the head coach, that he would just slide back into a position role moving forward with another staff.
Evan, we will see you on Saturday. Thanks for the insight today.
Thank you.
Good to spend time with Evan Bland, World Herald. Remember to get buckled up. It saves lives, prevents injuries, only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday with Nebraska Orthopedic Center and Dr. Brandon Seifert. I don't know if he's wearing his Ken Anderson jersey, his Boomer throwback, or he's just got the Joe Burrow gear on. But Dr. Brandon, tough offense to watch without Jamar Chase. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, buddy. I think I have to pull out the old Boomer jersey out of the closet.
I got one of those from Santa one year. I had to go with the black versus the road white, and I loved it. But Monday Night Football was tough. Big win for Cleveland. One of Mickey Joseph's prized kids, Jamar Chase, one of the top weapons. What a year he had. 4 to 6 weeks with a hip injury. Saw the footage where he was running, and then he kind of just limped off the field. Not last week, I should say last week, not recently this week, but this was against New Orleans in Week 6. And let's dive in a little bit here. When I hear and look at hip injuries, I think of Bo Jackson, worst-case scenario. But tell me a little bit here about what you can do to exacerbate that hip with specifically at the wide receiver's position.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, they're being a little bit cryptic in terms of what exactly he has. It's kind of non-specific in terms of the information that's out there. The big thing that's kind of all the rave these days is whether or not somebody has like a labral or a chondral injury. If you look at those two things, what that looks like anatomically is the hip joint, the ball and socket joint. On the socket side, there's a ring structure that sits around that called a labrum. We've spoken about this before with shoulders, kind of similar structure. But essentially, that's what can happen. He can develop some wear and tear on the labrum where part of that becomes loose, maybe can start to hang down, can catch inside the hip. That'd be kind of worst-case scenario where you'd need a hip scope, hip arthroscopy to go in and address that, whether you sew it back together or just clean it up. That's kind of the extreme pathology. You also can just have a scenario where you kind of bruise that, maybe scuff it up a little bit, but it's not unstable. That might be the scenario he's in at this point. I'm talking a 4 to 6 week return, so that's a possibility. The other possibility here is just to get a bad kind of deep bone bruise where you get a significant amount of swelling and bruising inside the bone itself, which that could be potentially what you might be experiencing, although a bit more rare in his sport. Then you kind of move to more front and outside of that hip. You start talking about like a hip flexor strain. That'd be where you have a tendon or muscle that kind of pulls your knee or your hip up to your chest. That'd be your hip flexors. That's a real possibility. And then you can even move to the outside of your hip, where basically your glute muscles come around and attached to the outside of your hip, and you could have a strain in one of those. Is a possibility, kind of lower on the possibility scale. So we do have kind of a variety of injuries that can happen in that area that would be common in our football athletes. Again, hard to speculate as to which one of these he has, although they have said that what he has does not need surgery, is what I saw in the listing today after he saw supposedly a specialist after MRI. So we can kind of speculate on those things. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was going to say, Brandon, you combine the fact that he's not going to need surgery with the fact that he was seen on crutches today at the Bengals facility, meaning you'd assume this injury is non-weight bearing of some sort. And I want to get your take if that gives you any sort of indication of what this could be, the fact that it's non-weight bearing, or is that just what a lot of these hip injuries are?
Yeah, usually they'll put those folks on crutches for comfort. So in his scenario, somebody's got a pretty bad, hip flexor strain. Putting them on crutches feels pretty good. It just kind of takes away that moment of kind of pulling that leg up, gives you some rest. So that could be, a possibility what he's dealing with. But you could obviously, think about it maybe going deeper into his hip, into his labrum itself, and maybe he does have kind of some bruising, maybe a kind of a partial injury to that labrum, and that could be the same scenario by putting him on crutches.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, a Jock Doc Wednesday, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. He gets his 4 to 6 weeks. He heals up. He's good to go. Great. How often is this a re-injury situation? He's so good off the line. He doesn't get grabbed or hit that often, but when he does, you can feel the pain, so to speak. So can he re-injure himself more easily than other injuries, I guess?
Yeah, looking at it from, maybe two different pathologies, if you go towards this is more of like a groin strain, hip flexor strain, then that's pretty easy to kind of retweak when you go back, at least initially, kind of thinking about like maybe even a hamstring strain type. And so from that perspective, if that's what it is, then yeah, I would anticipate kind of a rough spot ahead for him as he goes back. On the flip side, if it's more just kind of that deep bone bruise, maybe a little bit of a partial wear and tear on that labrum in the hip, a little less chance of irritating that. So maybe a little bit better prospect for him getting back. But again, both those can be kind of dicey in terms of that kind of early return.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us here on Nebraska Orthopedic Center on Hail Varsity Radio. Excuse me, Dr. Brandon, I completely flubbed your intro there. But to get back to Jamar Chase, is there any sort of thing? I mean, football seems like the kind of sport where it's hard to limit the sort of hits to your hips and what you have to be doing with your hips. Is there anything that can be done for a guy with a hip injury as he's returning back to the facility and getting back into the pads, getting on the practice field, getting on the playing field? Is there anything that can be done for a guy like Jamar Chase with a hip injury to try to keep that hip protected as he makes his return?
Yeah, it's a great question. The big thing for him is we always talk about kind of that early return to play program. It's all about trying to be able to preserve, that kind of muscular status and structure that you currently have. Obviously, you're going to lose some the more you kind of rest and pull back. And so it's a matter of finding that balance of let's get appropriate rest here, but let's also find a way to keep things active. Let's try to keep that quad firing and functioning appropriately. And that really kind of becomes that big kind of determinant in terms of, one, when are you going to get back? And two, how effective are you when you do get back? Is how well can we kind of preserve that muscular function and structure while also kind of resting an injury? And so, things you can do to kind of help that along is, maybe starting out with like a kind of a zero gravity type trainer situation where they one of these treadmills that can pull back on some of the gravity and the weight, and you start kind of a running program through that. Obviously, being in the pool is one way to do that. Getting on a stationary bike's another. But if he's on crutches already, he's probably looking at, I would think, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks before he's even back jogging. And that would just be kind of light jogging. And then you got to think about how long is it going to take to get back to sprinting shape. And then once you get back to sprinting shape, what's it feel like to get back to like explosive shape where you're coming up out of a stance or you're cutting at 100%. So that'll be kind of the big question marks for him.
Well, Jamar, get back out there. Don't get hit. Right? Simple as that. That's the message from Joey B. and Zach Taylor.
Put a green jersey on him.
Yeah. During the game even, right? Just have a gentleman's bet. Dr. Brandon Seifert with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. A Jock Doc Wednesday. Our topic today, Jamar Chase, incredible ball player. And many of us in fantasy and just football fans in general want to see him get back at it. We'll see how he recovers from this hip issue. Dr. Brandon, thanks for jumping on with us today. Always great to spend a few minutes with you.
All right. Thanks, fellas. You guys take care.
All right, you too. There he is, Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. A Jock Doc Wednesday. Those are uploaded, the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and can always catch those as well on Nebraska Orthopedic's website. So good insight there. We'll see if we need to dive into elbow and nerve issues with right-handed quarterbacks, if it's an extended issue versus the mother of all funny bone hurts.
So potentially give you a little preview of a Jock Doc for next Wednesday, maybe.
Yes. You're going to maybe live without Casey this week. Got to get to... Even if you don't get to 6, what does 5 look like? What's the rest of the season look like? We'll wind out a Wednesday. Good stuff today, and get you lined up tomorrow. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, big thanks to Mike Babcock and Ernest Hausmann in Hour 1. Brad Edwards, College Football Insider, along with Evan Bland in Hour 2. Searles tomorrow. Coach Barnett will join us tomorrow. Brandon Vogel, even though I haven't asked him yet, I'm hoping he's listening and says, yeah, sure, why not? And then, of course, Danny Burke from VEASAN Sports Network. VEASAN and Danny do a great job of wagering. The friends at Currency bring you Hail Varsity Radio for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Speaking of betting, Mattress Mac, maybe you heard of him, maybe you know him. He's a furniture/mattress mogul down in Houston. He is a guy who loves to wager on big-time events.
Especially his hometown Houston Astros.
Yeah, and Mattress Mac is 2-13 all-time betting. He is currently down $27.6 million. He has $10 million on the Astros to win $74 million. He might be on his way down to $40 million. And he went to the wrong place to enjoy a road venue for baseball because Eagle fans insane, except for Pastor Scheich. Love you. So you're not part of this Philly take. And then Philadelphia Phillies fans, I mean, the city itself, I mean, they are irate, they're insane, they are flat out intense, and they want to fight. They like to fight. And Mattress Max looks 150 years old here. Maybe you saw the video on Twitter. He got pushed too far, and he's losing his backside in the betting side of things anyway, and Philly fan made him lose it last night. So that's a snippet there. You've got this sweet old man in his Astro Orange walking along the concourse and just lost it. He had to be restrained by police. He was going after Philly fan. Don't know what Philly fan said, if they did or didn't like his mattresses.
Well, it sounds, you can kind of make out some of the things they're saying, and maybe it doesn't come across radio. It sounds like they're saying you're done for, which I assume would be referring to his bet.
His bet, right. And they lost. They gave up 5 bombs last night, and he's losing it. He's F-bombing this Philly guy who I would bet money has probably brass knuckles on or in his pocket. Not that he'd need them, but Mac had to be restrained by the popo. And I had tears in my eyes. I was laughing so hard watching the sweet old man want to throw down.
Well, if I know anything about Philly, and most of what I know about Philly has been given to me by the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I know there's probably plenty of grain alcohol flowing through the bodies of Phillies fans last night.
Well, and they don't even need to. They don't even need it to get in the mood. I mean, they're born that way. They booed Santa Claus. They cheered when Michael. They cheered when Michael Irvin was down with a neck injury.
Have you heard Bill Burr's rant against the city of Philadelphia?
I think I have.
It's not even close to something we could even play 5 seconds of on the air. It's wonderful, though. I encourage those of you that have the ears for it, the crudeness of Bill Burr, to go listen to Bill Burr's.
Bill Burr's hilarious.
Bill Burr's rant against the city of Philadelphia it'll leave tears in your eyes for 10 minutes.
I've been listening to a little bit of the Rogan podcast, and the Diaz guy.
Oh, yeah, Joey Diaz.
Joey Diaz is nuts. But to be frank with you, I picture every Philly fan as Joey Diaz. Right? Mattress Mac, God love you. You can afford it, but just walk away. Tomorrow, big show. Searle's with us and company. Talk to you at 4 on Hail Varsity.